Hello again, I'm Maggie Meggs, Director of the Forest Dwelling Program, Spirituality for Our Wisdom Years, here at Oblate School of Theology in beautiful San Antonio, Texas. This is the second of 2 videos in this particular series, Discovering in the Forest, Facing Our Mortality and Finding Joy. This video may not be quite as heavy as the first, but I invite you once again to pay attention and to take breaks as needed. So let's start with this prayer from Pierre Teilhard de Chardin from his book, The Divine Milieu. When the signs of age begin to mark my body, and still more when they touch my mind, when the illness that is to diminish me or carry me off strikes from without or is born within me, when the painful moment comes in which I suddenly awaken to the fact that I am losing hold of myself and am absolutely passive within the great unknown forces that have formed me. In all those dark moments, O God, grant that I may understand that it is you, provided only my faith is strong enough, who are painfully parting the fibers of my being in order to penetrate to the very marrow of my substance and bear me away within yourself. Teach me to treat my death as an act of communion. Amen. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 18. My mother would be so happy that her good death can serve as an inspiration. The tragic death of my younger brother was the seed for this gift she gives to us and to so many others. Her legacy is simple yet profound, and she is present to us today in a most intimate and spirit-filled way. Henry Nouwen describes it like this: one of the mysteries of life is that memory can often bring us closer to each other than can physical presence. Physical presence not only invites, but also blocks communication. In our pre-resurrection state, our bodies hide as much as they reveal. Indeed, many of our disappointments and frustrations in life are related to the fact that seeing and touching each other does not always create the closeness we seek. The more experience in living we have, the more we sense that closeness grows in the continuous interplay between presence and absence. Reverend Mary Earle, one of our Forest Dwelling core faculty, always refers to someone who has died as a blessed memory. And in this, I hear the generosity and unconditional love of God for each and every one of us to embrace. I also like this sentiment that I found online from Rising Back Again. Death takes the body, God takes the soul. Our mind holds the memories. Our heart keeps the love. Our faith lets us know we will meet again. In her book, The Gift of Years, Joan Chittister writes of the burdens and blessings of aging. This particular blessing is an opportunity to do the work of freeing ourselves from what has been weighing us down through the years. Sister Joan writes, a blessing of these years is the opportunity to face what it is in us that has been enslaving us, and to let our spirit fly free of whatever has been tying it to the earth all these years. So it's an important thing to ponder as we age, but I don't think until we're facing our physical death do we have enough compassion to safely untie those knots that have held us captive since we began our earthly journey. This includes our fears and wounds and the ways we've learned to deal with them. Without even knowing it, we begin to protect ourselves in ways that may have outlived their usefulness, keeping us tied up in those knots. The philosopher and writer Michael Meade says this: "Our greatest gifts are right next to our deepest wounds. Now is the time to do the soul work of liberating ourselves, and as Chittister says, to let our spirit fly free." As you begin to examine your life, what is it that stands out for you as something that enslaves you, that keeps you from being yourself in a loving and authentic way? And what have been your greatest gifts over the years that are right next to those wounds that have tied you up in knots? You may want to pause the video now and make a list of where you feel bound up. Another way to think about this is to list where you still feel wounded. Do this with tenderness and a light touch. As an example, on my list, I still have ties to wanting to be seen as special, to not be found out as lacking in some ways. I fear letting go of control and being consumed by chaos, of being judged harshly for my imperfections. Fortunately, as I continue my psychological and spiritual work, these wounds are lessening over time. It's so helpful to lovingly bring those things that bind us into the light of awareness so that we can compassionately work with them. And of course, the inner healer is doing her mysterious work at the same time, doing what we cannot. In her book, Chittister lists some excellent questions to reflect upon, which can help you identify and live in new ways with your knots. I have selected a few to give you a place to start, but I really encourage you to get her book. I know it will help to ease some of your burdens and lead you into a new appreciation for your blessings as the years go on. As you read through these, notice how you're initially reacting: judgmental and humiliated, or humble and gracious. I'm inviting you to read them again, this time with curiosity and perhaps even a bit of gentle humor. I invite you now to stop the video, turn to the list you made of where you are bound up, tied in knots, and do what Chittister has done. Restate the list in the positive light of how you might live your life going forward. Now, this is not to shame you into trying to live perfectly, but rather to free you up to live more fully into all of who you are, amplifying the natural goodness of your soul while compassionately allowing for your humanity with both its good and bad aspects. Lawrence Freeman is one of the co-founders of the World Community of Christian Meditation. If you haven't looked at their website, wccm.org, I encourage you to do so. Besides being an excellent resource for how to meditate, it offers many insights and resources for living a contemplative life. Last year, I read this from Freeman's blog shortly after he was diagnosed and treated for cancer. In it, he offers this wise counsel for being prepared for the time when we receive our own life-threatening diagnosis. He says, "When the doctor found a growth in my bladder, his first reassuring words were, 'We can fix it.' Now, one of the mysterious things in all this was the strong, silent feeling of peace and even thankfulness, which I think comes in no small part directly from the communication of presence in the community of love we share. I'm being taught a lot through this illness and its treatment and effects. First, the meaning of be ready. We cannot be completely ready, however, because in some degree we will always be taken by surprise. Secondly, trust, especially the professional skills in healing arts of others caring for you, grateful for how they follow their calling and develop their expertise. Thirdly, accept. Embrace the loneliness of sickness, allowing it to be converted into the uniqueness of solitude. And Freeman goes on to say, one other benefit of this experience of illness and community is the grace, the sheer givenness of a sharper oneness with all those who suffer. The news and images of human pain created by inhumanity in Gaza and Ukraine understandably outrage, sicken, and depress us. But like the illness of one body when it is undergone in community, the ordeal of these two places and so many others can illuminate the one body we belong to. That becomes the source of hope and of our hunger and thirst for justice and peace. Now, while we don't have any control over when and how we shall die, statistically speaking, most of us will die from some disease process. Can you see that the road leading up to your own diagnosis can make a difference in how you receive it? Having a daily contemplative prayer practice and a community with which you can share the journey will make this a special and sacred time. If you don't have a daily contemplative practice yet, what steps would you want to follow to get this started? It will help you to receive the gift of peace that is our spiritual legacy. As Father Ron Rolheiser writes from the Christian tradition, Jesus said to his followers, I am going away, but I will leave you a final gift, the gift of my peace. The challenge is to live in such a way that peace will be our final farewell gift to our families, our loved ones, our faith community, and our world. Rolheiser asks, how do we do that? Now, in partial answer to his compelling question about how we too can leave the gift of peace to those we love, I've included two excellent resources, links to theconversationproject.org and 5 Wishes. Both of them provide workbooks and guiding questions for you to consider and then communicate to your loved ones about how you want to be treated in the last part of your life. Questions range from quality of life, Questions range from quality of life to communication about giving food and other life-extending medicines and treatments in the very last part. In the first video of this series, I mentioned what a gift it was to have clearly heard my mother speaking about her wishes for end-of-life care. There is a part of us that desperately wants to hang on to hope and the physical presence of our loved ones, regardless of the cost and quality of treatment. It's one of your final gifts when you relieve your loved ones of the burden of saying no to a treatment that medical providers will surely offer. It has been said that we live not only in a death-denying society, but in a death-defying society. We can get caught up in that if we aren't careful. And I use that word deliberately. careful, full of the kind of care that respects my loved one's wishes, even as I am still tempted to desperately cling to a few more days, weeks, months of their physical presence. Now, I'm going to encourage you to stop the video now and take a look at both these sites. Then make a commitment to slowly begin to work through the questions, maybe one question a week or even a month. Both have similar approaches, so pick the one that appeals to you. It will help you come to clarity around these issues, and then you can share them with loved ones. Now, make sure you do this with all your significant others, including children if you have them, not just the ones with whom you are closest. It's common to have blended families, second spouses, and even if you don't want to discuss it in depth with each of them, it will be a gift if you can share the basics of your wishes with everyone. It's not uncommon to have an estranged family member swoop in at the last minute, full of regret and the desire to extend life to make them feel better. Now, I invite you to pause and think about those with whom you need to share your preferences. For those you do not want to speak with directly, consider writing them a letter and enclose a copy of your reflections about how you wish to live and die. You can either mail it right away or entrust it to someone who can give it to them when the time is near. It will be your words, your wishes, not just what one family member reports. The close family member may be 100% accurate, but their recollection will not be received as well as when it is clearly in your own words. It may help ease the hurt and anger that sometimes erupts when death comes in the midst of unhealed relationships. You can also help your loved ones by creating a file with your will or estate, a list of special items you want each to have, a list of your passwords for any financial or insurance documents, and don't forget the password to get into your computer or phone, the letters you may want to leave for those you love, especially those with whom you may need to ask or grant forgiveness, and prepaid burial documents if possible. It's important to include your desires for the type of burial you want, the type of service you want, and any other special requests. If you have all of this ready and together in one place, you will not have to take precious time away from the special moments of saying goodbye when you receive that unexpected terminal diagnosis. And if your death is sudden, your loved ones will at least have the comfort of knowing that you are helping them in their time of shock and pain. You can organize and do this in steps, but don't put it off too long. Later may come sooner than you think. For those who believe that contemplating death before it is imminent is a morbid and fruitless task, let's consider this wisdom from the authors of From Aging to Saging. If we do our contemplative work as spiritual elders in training, when we arrive in the December years with its physical challenges and emotional losses, we'll have the spiritual capital to meet them with some measure of acceptance and equanimity. We'll also learn the art of appreciation. If I rush through a meal to get on to my next task, I won't appreciate the delightful taste of the food. But if I embrace the slower rhythms that life imposes on me, I enter the present moment without resistance and with great appreciation, and my enjoyment quotient rises accordingly. Earlier in life, we are busy, both because it is necessary and because we are taught that busyness is a virtue. And now it's a habit for many of us. You may want to pause the video and consider what you have been taught about being busy. For instance, I was taught as a child that I had to finish my work before I could go out and play. Now, that helped in many ways in the first half of life. But what I'm beginning to realize is that being done before playing may have outlived its usefulness. An update to this rule of living now is to think of it more like a gentle cycling of work and rest, beginnings and endings, rather than as a linear and finite event. That way, I value both and enjoy all of it in new ways. It's much less demanding and exhausting for this aging body and mind, and opens the door to savor life in my remaining days on Earth. You may want to pause the video now and consider, how has being busy and productive been useful in your life? And what has the downside of it been? Do you need to give yourself permission to slow down? Take a look at your current schedule and ask yourself if there is room to simply relax, room to take care of yourself, and to enjoy the company of those you love. If not, what changes can you make? Another area to consider are the simple physical pleasures you enjoy. Can you invest them with conscious gratitude for the gift that God offers to us while in physical form on earth? For instance, I absolutely love to be barefoot, to feel my feet touching the ground. I can't go barefoot all the time like I did when I was a kid because it hurts my feet now that I'm older. But I make it a habit to deliberately take off my shoes and feel the grace that comes with that simple act. It's a sensual connection with Mother Earth, which I'm guessing is not available even to those heavenly spirits we call angels. Just a thought that makes me chuckle when I indulge myself. One of the things we encourage participants to do in the second year of the program is a life review. We do this for a couple of reasons. One is that you have a different viewpoint, a context as an elder that you didn't when you were younger. We all have a story about our life, and a life review at this time is no longer about the facts and details as much as it is a willingness to let it all be seen as a journey of grace and transformation, all within the mystery of life that has seen and unseen gifts. And there's healing in doing this. The book, From Aging to Saging, as well as The Grace in Aging by Kathleen Dowling Singh, will give you some guidance if you would like to do this for yourself. The only requirement is that it be done with love and compassion. One of the gifts of spiritual elderhood is to give yourself permission to be joyful and let go of the burden of focusing on being happy. There's a big difference between the two, but we are mostly taught to seek happiness. At this time of life, we can begin to tease out the spiritual joy that lies hidden within us and no longer rely on the happiness that is dependent on things in the outer world that come and go. Joy is often subtle, so it's something we may need to cultivate in our awareness. I've included a couple of questions that may be helpful in this regard. I invite you to pause the video now and consider, what brings you joy? How do you experience it in your body, mind, and spirit? Are you more or less likely to experience that when you're rushing around? Do you need to make space and time to savor what brings you joy? As I mentioned in a previous video, the Buddhist tradition brought to the Western world the practice of mindfulness, of experiencing the present moment with our senses and a non-judgmental mind. There's so much we miss when we get caught up in thoughts and feelings. And the thing we miss the most is the simple gift of life itself. Early in our religious education, many of us were taught that God is in the church or in the temple. And now is the time to become more and more aware of the presence of God in all living things. This is the glory of God that we can awaken to in the simplicity of the ordinary moment. There's a wonderful book called In Search of Wisdom, which is a conversation between three French Buddhist teachers, a monk, a psychiatrist, and a philosopher. Alexander Jolien is the philosopher, and I think it's important to note that his wisdom does not come through easy circumstances. He was born with a birth defect and was institutionalized for the first decades of his life. And he still contends with serious challenges of his physical condition. I tend to be an overly serious person, and I have found his teaching about the difference between happiness and joy to be profoundly liberating. Jolien says, "If I insist on joy, it's because it seems much simpler, more accessible to me than happiness. It seems to me that the imperative to be happy at all costs leaves many people by the wayside. Being more humble, joy also seems to me to be closer to our weaknesses, to our limitations. Why equate joy with exuberance, superficiality, when above all, it is saying yes? It is a profound and authentic yes to reality, just as it comes." So how does his description of joy as saying yes to reality, just as it comes, create space for joy in your life now, even in the midst of outer circumstances that are anything but happy? How can this help bring you the gift of God's peace and presence in every moment? I love this idea from the spiritual writer Anne Lamott. Older joy is not so much about chasing down things as it is about what seizes the eye out the window or on a walk. Older joy is less caffeinated. When you're younger, joy is photographable for display on the curated Facebook life. Younger joy means endorphins. Older joy feels more like contentment. Someone at my church once said that peace is joy at rest, and joy is peace on its feet. Lamott is also affirming that joy arises in the simple moments of life. Watching squirrels play is one that often seizes my eyes. And I also want to share another resource to help you start tuning in to joy. There's a wonderful documentary on Netflix called Mission Joy, which features the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Now, both of these men know what injustice feels like, and yet they have received the grace of saying yes to all of life. Let's watch this short video clip together and be inspired by their elder wisdom and joy.
You are made for perfection. You are not yet perfect. You are a masterpiece in the making.
In spite 80 years old, still I consider student.
Really?
Really. Every day learning.
Yes. You are wonderful.
I expect that kind of comment.
We see him so serene and calm. But there was a time when he too... It's like muscles that have to be exercised.
Growth. It take time. Minute by minute. Day by day, month by month, year by year, decade by decade.
Start where you are. Do what you can. You will be surprised by the joy.
I included this slide because it brings attention to another gift of aging. We get to be curious and create, and the joy that arises when we do so. An added bonus is that there's no pressure to prove anything at this stage of life. That's for the first half when we're making our way in the world. Many of us know someone who took up a paintbrush or a musical instrument or making something out of wood in their later years. It doesn't matter what you do, but trust that you will receive unknown gifts of the Spirit as you find your way through to the joy of it all. Check out the website for some wonderful ideas, poetry, and prayers. It's also a good resource for younger people who may be struggling with chronic illness. This short essay from Reverend Frederick Buechner can help us to discover the joys of a second childhood. By this, he doesn't mean being childish, but rather childlike. He says it with his usual profound, tongue-in-cheek humor. It's a little bit long, but I think it's worth listening to. He says, "Old age is not, as the saying goes, for sissies. There are some lucky ones who little by little slow down to be sure, but otherwise go on to the end pretty much as usual. For the majority, however, it's like living in a house that's in increasing need of repairs. The plumbing doesn't work right anymore. There are bats in the attic, cracked and dusty. The windows are hard to see through, and there's a lot of creaking and groaning in bad weather. The exterior could use a coat of paint, and so on. The odd thing is that the person living in the house may feel, humanly speaking, much as always. The 80-year-old body can be in precarious shape, yet the spirit within as full of beans as ever. If that leads senior citizens to think of all the things they'd still love to do but can't anymore, it only makes things worse. But it needn't work that way. Second childhood commonly means something to steer clear of, but it can also mean something else. It can mean that if your spirit is still more or less intact, one of the benefits of being an old crock is that you can enjoy again something of what it's like being a young squirt. 8-year-olds, like 80-year-olds, have lots of things they'd love to do, but can't because they know they aren't up to them. So they learn to play instead. 80-year-olds might do well to take notice. They can play at being 80-year-olds, for instance. Stiff knees and hearing aids, memory loss and poor eyesight are no fun, but there are those who marvelously survive them by somehow managing to see them as, among other things, and in spite of it all, a little funny. Another thing is that if part of the pleasure of being a child the first time round is that you don't have to prove yourself yet, part of the pleasure of being a child the second time round is that you don't have to prove yourself any longer. You can be who you are and say what you feel and let the chips fall where they may. Very young children and very old children also have in common the advantage of being able to sit on the sideline of things. While everybody else is in there jockeying for a position and sweating it out, they can lean back, put their feet up, and like the octogenarian King Lear, quote, pray and sing and tell old tales and laugh at gilded butterflies, unquote. Very young children and very old children also seem to be in touch with something that the rest of the pack has lost track of. There's something bright and still about them at their best, like the sun before breakfast. Both the old and the young get scared sometimes about what lies ahead of them, and with good reason. But you can't help feeling that whatever inner goldenness and peace they're in touch with will see them through in the end. Well said, Reverend Buechner. And this slide is just to make you smile. I think usernames and passwords are so tedious, just a little bit of necessary hell for these times. Fortunately, I also think that there is the possibility of experiencing heaven on earth in so many more ways. I've included this poem from Clarence Heller that says it well. I woke up in heaven today. I could hear the angels singing praises to God through the voices of the birds. I could see the majesty of life energy manifested through budding flowers and leaves, white, green, yellow, blue, mauve. I could witness freedom as birds soared and swooped, as butterflies fluttered along, and through my choice, whether to be attentive. I was blinded by the beatific vision of the sun and the sky and a young child's smile. I woke up in heaven today and wondered, what do people do in heaven? And I suppose the answer may be enjoy life, share love, participate in beauty, and praise God in the process. And just in case you need divine permission to play, these words from Father Ron Rolheiser will help you realize that you already have it. He says, and what does the exuberance in the energy of young children say about our Creator? What does their playfulness suggest about what must also lie inside of sacred energy? What does the energy of a young puppy tell us about what's sacred? What do laughter, wit, and irony tell us about God? No doubt the energy we see around us and feel irrepressibly within us tells us that underneath, before, and below everything else, there flows a sacred force, both physical and spiritual, which is at its root joyous, happy, playful, exuberant, effervescent, and deeply personal and loving. That energy is God. That energy speaks of God, and that energy tells us why God made us and what kind of permissions God is giving us for living out our lives. When we try to imagine the heart of reality, we might picture things this way. At the very center of everything, there sit two thrones. On one sits a king, and on the other sits a queen. And from these two thrones issues forth all energy, all creativity, all power, all love, all nourishment, all joy, all playfulness, all humor, and all beauty. Now, all images of God are inadequate, but this image hopefully can help us understand that God is perfect masculinity and perfect femininity, making perfect love all the time, and that from this union issues forth all energy and all creation. Moreover, that energy at its sacred root is not just creative, intelligent, personal, and loving. It's also joyous, colorful, witty, playful, humorous, erotic, and exuberant at its very core. To feel it is an invitation to gratitude. The challenge of our lives is to live inside that energy in a way that honors it and its origins. That means keeping our shoes off before the burning bush as we respect its sacredness, even as we take from it permission to be more robust, free, joyous, humorous, and playful, and especially more grateful. Thank you, Father Ron, for that wisdom. I've included some questions that come up on our journey in the forest dwelling program. These reflections change and deepen people as they engage with a mature spirituality, in particular as we squarely face our mortality. Once again, I remind you to take your time with these questions. At first, they may seem overwhelming, but trust that they will lead you to the freedom and joy which is waiting to be discovered at this time of life. I want to finish with this beautiful poem from Mary Oliver. When death comes, like the hungry bear in autumn, when death comes and takes all the bright coins from his purse to buy me and snaps the purse shut, when death comes like the measle pox, when death comes like an iceberg between the shoulder blades, I want to step through the door full of curiosity, wondering, what is it going to be like, that cottage of darkness? And therefore, I look upon everything as a brotherhood and a sisterhood, and I look upon time as no more than an idea, and I consider eternity as another possibility, and I think of each life as a flower, as common as a field daisy, and as singular, and each name a comfortable music in the mouth, tending as all music does towards silence, and each body a lion of courage and something precious to the earth. When it's over, I want to say all my life I was a bride married to amazement. I was the bridegroom taking the world into my arms. When it's over, I don't want to wonder if I have made of my life something particular and real. I don't want to find myself sighing and frightened or full of argument. I don't want to end up simply having visited this world. Thank you so much for being part of this second video. Next, we will have our live group discussion on Zoom, and Emmett will be sending you instructions and a link to join with us. May you notice with kindness the part of you that is afraid, and trust that if you stay with us, you will find peace and the ability to experience joy through saying yes to your life just as it is. See you next time.
Hi, my name is Scott O'Brien. I live right here in San Antonio. And the reason that I got into the forest dwelling program was I read a book by Father Richard Rohr called Falling Upward. He talked about the first half and second half of life. And I found myself at the threshold of the second half of life, and I heard about this program and wanted to be prepared to live the second half of my life to the absolute fullest. So if you find yourself in a similar situation where you're thinking about what you want to do after maybe your careers and all the things that you've accomplished in life and how you're going to live your second half of life, I cannot encourage you more to actually treat yourself to this fantastic program. It's a commitment. You will spend a lot of time. You will get so much in return. You'll be involved in an elder circle. You'll find out about that. And it is an unbelievable blessing. I have made friendships that will last the rest of my life, for which I will forever be grateful. So if you're thinking about it, do it. It's awesome.